a guy that probably doesn't probably doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of an off season because he's always breaking down film. And I always, like I said, if you're a football fan and you like to see guys break down film, Daniel Jeremiah does some stuff on this and all that good stuff. If you like someone that breaks down film, and it's real easy at Coach Dan Casey on Twitter, and that he joins us now, head football coach at St. David's School in Raleigh, North Carolina. Also the track and field sprint coach as well. So we'll get into some of that as well. Coach, thanks for joining us, and good afternoon where you are.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you joining us as well. Now, you're a guy, you love to break down the film, great football mind, and fans here on Triple Play, remember, you joined Robert a few months ago when OSU hired Sean Gleason. I think your tweet was, OSU fans should get ready to have some fun. Excited for that, and obviously not too far away from welcoming in Sean Gleason. Don't want to spend the whole time on film study, but you've recently done some on Oklahoma State. You've done some throughout the last year or so, and you even dating back to I think Holgerson was probably the OC back like the Whedon
hmm
Justin Blackman years at OSU, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, I probably said this before when y'all ended up bringing Sean Gleason on board, but one of the things I love about Coach Gundy is that he always brings in some creative offensive minds and keeps the system cohesive to that OSU identity, but allows for some really fun things to happen. So no matter who's the OC at Oklahoma State, I always try and watch because there's something good happening there for sure.
That was kind of one of my next thing was one common theme, and you did some from last year from when Mason Rudolph was there. I guess most people would call it window dressing, right? Like it seems to be a staple for OSU, and maybe it's that creativity. You expect that to continue with Gleason, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, and maybe even you might even get more of it. I mean, if you really look into some of what Princeton was doing the past few years, it started with the OC, the previous who's now the head coach at Brown. But then when Gleason took over, they just did some really fun stuff. A lot of motion, a lot of different formations, a lot of creativity. Two quarterback systems where they had multiple quarterbacks in the game. You never knew who was going to get the ball, who was going to throw the ball, where it was going. Lots of screens. I mean, they did some really fun stuff, and I would imagine with some of the athletes he'll have at his disposal at Oklahoma State this next year, it's going to be pretty wide open.
Yeah, it's exciting certainly for Oklahoma State fans. Okay, Coach, again talking with Coach Dan Casey from St. David's School down there in Raleigh, North Carolina. One that stood out from this past year that you broke down some film on was a run scheme Oklahoma State used against Texas. It was kind of in
hmm
when Texas was in their bowl game and everything like that. Obviously worked well in a big OSU win against Texas, but just talk a little bit about what Coach Gundy and that offense and Mike Yursich last year were able to do against a really tough Texas defense that gave them an edge up in that win.
Absolutely, yeah. I think they did some really nice things against Texas. I think everyone really struggled with that odd front that Texas was presenting with the kind of the nose head up on the center, and then they had two defensive ends play on the inside shoulder of the tackle, which is a lot of football coaches refer to it as a 4-eye technique. And the defensive front specifically that Texas was running is called a tight front, so three-man front, and then you have the contained players are actually off the ball. And so a lot of teams struggled with that because they closed down a lot of run gaps. It was hard to run to the middle. They plugged up the B gaps. Obviously, the nose would usually two gap or fall backside and really take the A gap away. So you really were having to run outside, but then you'd be running into these safeties who were coming downhill in a hurry, and it was just really hard to get the run game going against this defensive front. And I think one of the things that Oklahoma State did a really nice job is, first of all, they played with tempo. They kept moving every time they had a positive play. They were on the ball pretty quickly. But one of the things that they did against Texas, against that three-man front, was they actually went to an unbalanced line. They had three offensive linemen for example, to the right side of the center. Then they hung a tight end backside in kind of the tackle position, and they would release him down the field. And one of the things that unbalanced formation was able to do is able to create a three-man surface for the offense to the field, and they were able to run some of their outside zone stuff. I think they did it with Hubbard. I think Justin Hill might have gotten it a couple times, but it worked well because it really forced Texas to kind of get out of their bread and butter defensive fronts and do some different things, and not be as creative with their blitz packages. So I think between going with pace and playing a little faster, but also doing some unbalanced formations and some stacking players up into the boundary and just giving some different creative looks, it really didn't really give Texas an opportunity to get in a rhythm defensively. And they jumped on them early, and that was it was pretty unique that they were able to do that. Not many teams had that kind of success against Texas.
Now, before one last thing, and then we'll about OSU as a general, and then we'll get kind of to Chuba Hubbard. That was kind of the transition I wanted to use. But
for sure,
you mentioned pace there. Sean Gleason said, he thought he went fast at Princeton. That was one of his first comments. He thought he went fast there. But the turbo that Gundy uses, turbo is what they call it. It was just so much faster, and it kind of opened his eyes. Well, I think to maybe like a casual football fan, like how different is as fast as Oklahoma State goes? Like how different is that based on like we see the no huddle used at the NFL level? How different is that when you just even speed it up that little bit more?
Yeah, well, it really presents a lot of challenges for the defense because they not only have to identify a formation and personnel, but they have to try and get a call in. And so really what it does is the offense obviously has to simplify somewhat. You're not going to see as many shifts and as many motions and as many different formations or personnel groupings. So the offense is a little bit simplified, but what it really does is it forces the defense to simplify and play a lot of their base coverages, which allows for the offense to identify even quicker what the defense is doing and take advantage of it. And so not only that, but it really wears on defenders because they're running to the football, making the tackle, having to jump back up, get in formation, and get ready to play again. And even just going 1 or 2 seconds faster is the difference between the defense being able to make an adjustment mid-series and have to stay in the same personnel and the same call the whole series. And I think with what Oklahoma State is able to do is when they're able to get rolling, they keep the same personnel grouping for the defense on the field, and they keep them in usually a very similar or the same defensive check the whole series, and that really creates some matchups that are favorable for the offense, and it's really difficult for the defense to adjust. If you don't want to burn a timeout, you're kind of stuck just reacting to what they're doing.
Yeah, it's something that we've seen over the past probably decade now, and looking forward to seeing if any wrinkles come in. Probably will from Coach Sean Gleason. Well, we could spend the next half hour talking about Oklahoma State's offense, but I want to talk a little bit about Chuba Hubbard. I saw the tweet, and I did check this morning. He is still technically on the track roster online at OSU this last season. And you had a tweet about a month ago. I think it was June 7th, right around there. That. Of Antonio Brown working out this offseason on a track. Why, there was a video, and why is the track part that you pulled out of that is his offseason workout? Why did that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean it's something that's been kind of a newer revelation for me as a football coach. And again, I grew up playing. I ran track in high school, but never took it that seriously. It was just kind of an off-season thing to do. But as I got into the coaching side of things, I started to realize that some of the best development, physical performance-based development, was happening on the track. And so I started to investigate it a little bit further, started to reach out to some track coaches. I'm very much a novice and just beginning. I do help out and coach the track team at St. David's, but I'm still learning and figuring a lot of things out. But it's been interesting for me as I've talked to these guys about what's the best way that we can prepare our athletes for the fall and for the season. And I've just become more and more a believer that getting them on the track is one of the best ways, even greater than anything we could do in the weight room for off-season conditioning. And I think part of the reason I've started to realize that, and I think NFL guys are starting to realize it too, not only Antonio Brown, but I think Christian McCaffrey came out with an article, or there was an article that came out about Christian McCaffrey and some of his off-season programming and how speed-centric it is, how much he's on the track with track spikes and everything. And it started to kind of open my eyes to what is really best for athletes. And part of the reason, as I started to dig into it more, is that you realize the force that you're able to generate when running 100% full speed is incredible. There have been studies done that show that track athletes and sprinters in particular are creating forces when they drop that foot down, spring speed that are equal to or greater than 3 times their body weight. So say you got a 200-pound running back, and you have him running full speed 100% as fast as he can on a track in track spikes. He's generating almost 600 pounds of force on one leg when he's running full speed. And there's nothing that we can do that I can think of in the weight room that's going to generate that kind of force. Even if you have that same 200-pound kid in the weight room squatting, say you put 600 pounds on his back and he squats it, he's squatting that with 2 feet, not one, obviously. And so the more I dug into it, I was just like, wow, the amount of force you're able to generate and the amount of tendon strength you're able to create through running track and jumping, long jump, high jump, particularly the sprints and even hurdles as well. It just creates just some seriously powerful athletes. And obviously, football is big into the weight room culture, and a lot of the team building does happen there. But I think you're even starting to see some strength and conditioning coaches start to realize that nothing they can do in the weight room can even create the same kind of force and the same kind of explosiveness that just running full speed can create, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's so simple. It's not rocket science, but getting guys on a track, in track spikes, running full speed has created some massive gains for professional athletes and college athletes alike. And if you watch closely on the Antonio Brown video, you see that he's actually working with a legendary track coach from down in Phoenix, Arizona, Dan Path. And one of the things that Dan Path is talking about, he's timing him, and he's basically saying, you're running a 4.35 And Antonio Brown's a veteran, well into his career, and that's far better than he ran at the combine. So he is improving his speed late into his career, and you're starting to see longevity happen and maintaining speed because of some of the techniques that guys are doing. So instead of running a bunch of conditioning drills and lifting heavy weights in the weight room, getting on the track is really what's creating this sustained success for a lot of these superstars in the NFL. And that just trickles down to the high school level, to the college level. People are starting to realize that getting on the track is maybe the best thing they can do in the offseason.
It's interesting, and I'm glad you pointed out the power aspect of that, because I didn't, it's not something that you generally think of, creating a powerful athlete is running on a track. But I'm a Wisconsin guy, so Jonathan Taylor came out of New Jersey area, and
Absolutely.
he was a track athlete in high school as well. But you look at the guy, he doesn't look like a track athlete, so to speak. But
No.
again, when you try to tackle the guy, he's an incredibly powerful lower body guy. That seems to be something that track helps with?
It absolutely does, and I think it's interesting because you hear a lot of football coaches. They'll see a kid running a track meet or something, and they'll take a look at that kid who may be a little more slender in his frame and say, "Man, I just can't wait till we get that kid in the weight room." Right? That's kind of the mentality of we'll bulk him up and he'll be ready to play football. But even you take a guy like Chuba Hubbard, like with the loaded backfield that Oklahoma State had last year. How was he able to contribute? How was he able to make such a big impact? And I would imagine more than anything, it was his speed and breakaway ability. And I think that's become more and more of a difference maker. That speed is gold currency in football nowadays. And so if you're going to break into the lineup, the best and easiest way to do it is to play faster than everybody else. And I think people generally don't necessarily think of track as creating power, but the more I've dug into it and learned more about it, strength is not just about your muscles, it's about your tendons, it's about your central nervous system. And one of the things that running track, and especially running maximum velocity, is able to do is able to raise the threshold and raise the level of your central nervous system. So a lot of times what I've noticed with my own guys is we'll run full speed on the track and we'll go into the weight room and they'll be hitting numbers they've never hit before, establishing their personal records, and it's because their central nervous system has grown and improved, even though we haven't been in the weight room nearly as much. So I think what people are starting to realize is that strength is not just about your muscles, it's kind of the whole system working together, and track really taps into your tendons and your central nervous system, which allows for explosiveness that just getting stronger muscles won't allow for.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Okay, so I'm assuming you're kind of a subscriber a little bit to the thinking out there that youth sports and maybe even after youth sports to to kind of cross-train and explore some of the other stuff. How important is that to not just, maybe even after high school? And I know if you're a Division I athlete, there maybe isn't the flexibility, or maybe the coach doesn't want you
Sure.
out there trying other sports. But it seems like there
Right,
are
right.
other avenues out there other than just being on a football field that can help your game.
I absolutely agree, and I think you see the Heisman Trophy winner last year. I know I probably shouldn't bring this guy up on an Oklahoma State show, but the Heisman Trophy winner was a two-sport athlete, and you're seeing guys have success in multiple sports. And I think honestly, just giving your body a break from some of this exact same movements that can really wear you down over the course of the year. I mean, I remember back even when I was playing, I had this opinion of that when I went to college, and instead of playing 3 or 4 sports in high school, I'd be playing one sport, that I'd be instantly way better. But the toll that those repetitive movements took on me, the injuries that ended up occurring from it, if you have a guy squatting for 6 straight months in the off season, he's going to wear down his hips. He's going to put a lot of pressure on his back. And what you're seeing is a lot of these guys are developing injuries, and some of them are not even able to finish their career because they're just playing football constantly or doing the off-season program constantly. And instead of exploring different movement patterns and exploring different skill sets that end up translating and transitioning onto the football field even better than we could have imagined. And, I always loved recruiting a kid off the basketball team to come play receiver for me. Guys that can have success with that kind of body control in one sport are generally going to have success in football. Obviously, there's some techniques that you have to iron out, but I think having multiple skills and that long-range athleticism that's not just football specific is important. And one of the guys that I always point to when I talk to my players is the Hall of Fame tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, Tony Gonzalez, spent every offseason just playing pickup basketball. And obviously one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history, maybe the greatest tight end in NFL history. And he was a guy that was constantly thinking about how one sport could translate into the other and how he could both remain healthy but also develop some skills that could translate onto the field. And I think more than anything, track and field is directly applicable to football. And the guys that have success, especially the sprint and jump events, generally have success in football. And so it's something that I think you're going to see more and more of a shift to. And I think ultimately the best thing that could happen is a college could develop a partnership between their football team and their track and field program and encourage guys to cross over. And I think you're going to see sustained success from both programs if someone's willing to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of times you have football coaches that are pretty possessive of their athletes, and you have track and field coaches that are pretty possessive of their athletes. But I think if we're able to share a little bit, we can make the kids better. And I think, honestly, that off-season training is going to be more exciting and more beneficial to them if they're able to cross over a little bit.
Kind of answered my last question for you, the injury angle. Now, the body movements is one thing, certainly. Is there anything to getting on a new surface, not just running on field or a turf or whatever it might be? Is there something to that? I know some people subscribe to that, don't always run on the same. Is there something to that or not really?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And I think, track and field is honestly at the forefront of that, of thinking through multiple surfaces with multiple different types of footwear. Obviously, when you're sprinting full speed, you're in track spikes, which have absolutely no cushioning. The track surface is usually pretty hard, so you're getting the maximum force when you drive your foot into that surface. You're getting the maximum response, which is where you really create that speed, that tendon strength. You're putting down 3 times your body weight in force, but then you can't do that every day. You're gonna completely wear your body out if you do that. So a lot of times you'll see track athletes will cross over. They'll run on grass. They'll put tennis shoes on, which will kind of lighten the load a little bit on their feet. You'll see sometimes even them running in the grass barefoot and changing the surface, changing the responsiveness of how they're doing certain things. And I think that's been really beneficial to them to keep those guys and those young ladies healthy over the long term, is changing the surface. And I think that's important. I think honestly a lot of football guys do struggle with injuries because we're really hammering home the same movement patterns over and over and over again with the same footwear on the same surfaces. And I think a lot of football guys do end up having unfortunately pretty weak feet. You see a lot of foot injuries, ankle injuries, because we're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again, but not necessarily allowing our body to adapt to different environments. And I know that was true of me as a player. I'm not necessarily saying that's true of every football player, but I think having different surfaces available to you and different environments to be running in is important. And at the end of the day, running full speed is the most athletic thing we could possibly do as human beings. That's something I tell my players all the time. And so we want to make sure that we're maximizing those opportunities to be fully rested, to be able to run full speed. And if we're not able to run full speed, we try and back off, rest them, so that by the time we come back the next time, they're ready to go, and we can get the maximum return on that.
Just absolutely fascinating stuff, Coach. I'm really appreciate your time, and glad we got to have this conversation, because it's just incredibly interesting, the crossover and the in-depth research that you've done on this. So I wanted to make sure that we got you on here before we see Chuba Hubbard hopefully racing down the football field. Certainly, know you're a super busy
I would
guy.
imagine you will.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a terrific athlete, so looking forward to that. I know you're a super busy guy, so really appreciate your time. You got some team camps going on right now, right?
Yeah, we just got back from team camp, so hopefully we can get rested up and keep making strides forward.
Very good. Well, best of luck with all of that, with all of the film breakdown that you do. I'm certainly going to continue to watch that, and I love it. So appreciate it, and fun talking ball for a little while.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. You guys have a good one.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. That is Coach Dan Casey.